Thanks for tuning into the Local SEO Today podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and share the episode. Joining me today is Raffi Jamgotchian. He started Triada Networks in 2008 and continues to be a leader in the IT and cybersecurity industry. Thanks for being on our show today, Raffi.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
So I'm excited to hear a little bit about you, how you got started, and maybe share with the audience members what got you into starting your own business. Maybe go way back into maybe earlier years.
Yeah. Grew up around computers. My dad's a computer programmer. When we came to the United States in the 70s, he took me around his work and I got my love for computers then. So it was kind of like a foregone conclusion that I would go into computers and IT. After graduating with an engineering degree, I worked in corporate IT for about 12 years, and one of the managers who had just left tapped my shoulder and said, "Hey, look, I'm starting an investment firm. I'd like you to help me build out the infrastructure." And that gave me the opportunity to build a company from the ground up, from a technology point of view, and also learn how to build a business. And so 2 years after that, I decided this is kind of a cool thing. I'm going to start doing this for other companies. And a number of other managers from that same investment firm started popping out and said, "Hey, I heard what you did for them. Can you help us build our thing?" And that's how we started. We started rolling with it from that point on.
That's amazing, man. So, in terms of how far back did you start learning computers? Because again, you started your business 12 years ago, and before that, you were in IT for 12 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, what has changed? Like IT has evolved in terms of advancement in technology and everything else. Like, were you always in cybersecurity? Like, what were you doing
No.
prior?
Yeah. So great question. So when I was in corporate IT, prior to starting Triada, I we had a little event where we had just we had just started building out our connections to the internet. So this is really early, kind of mid 90s. Right at that point, we had just had email. We didn't have any other internet browsing. Somebody got an email and clicked on it, and it started infecting the network. And so it was kind of all hands at that point, trying to figure out what happened, isolate it, then jump in, try to identify how it got in and all that. And just the thrill of it, unraveling all that really got me excited and said, okay, this is where I want to focus. And so from then on, I started focusing more on cybersecurity to the point where we were acquired by a number of bigger investment firms, and our small operation kind of became the model for the rest of the firm to start a security program because the company didn't have one at that point. So as we built the security program, me and my team, that kind of got us around that thing. That was just kind of the beginnings of what now we call cybersecurity, but that was what it. So when we started Triada, we knew that we wanted to be a security focused IT
Mm.
services company.
Gotcha. So right now, what kind of industries do you focus on? Is it still
Well,
startups or?
most of the time it's investment companies. What we do is our primary client base are small investment firms that are uh, large enough that need our services, which nearly is every investment firm, even if they're really small, that can't afford to have a full-time IT staff. And so even with a company that may be able to afford a full-time person, it's sometimes beneficial to work with a company like ours because now you have the breadth of experience of 20 plus years, 25 years of IT and cybersecurity, specifically in investments. So, I've been working with investment companies since 1995, and that brings along a lot of um, idea and it's of how to support companies like themselves at a smaller scale.
That's amazing. And this is what I mean by like owning your niche and space, right? Be the expert in that domain. And I love hearing that because 20 plus years of knowing your ideal type of client, knowing exactly what triggers they are and what really you need to provide support, right?
Yeah,
In
and
terms of
from a business
services.
point of view, it was interesting because when we started our company, we didn't necessarily focus on financial services. They happened to be who our first clients were, and that's where our experience was. But and it, thick head, it took me a couple of years to realize, hey, most of our best clients are in the financial services industry. Maybe we should actually market to them rather than just be a general
Yeah.
marketer around IT. And that's been really a boon for us. Absolutely.
Exactly. Once you realize like your ideal type of client and the best long-term value customers, right? Loyal ones that treat you right, take care of you. Those are the ones that you want to resonate with and get more of. So I love hearing that. Can you take me back a little bit about? I know you mentioned about your dad. Where did you guys originally come from, and why? Where like New York, out in the suburbs, which is New Jersey, were you always living there or?
Yeah, so I was born in London. My dad was going to university there while he was married to my mom. They had moved there from to Beirut. So my dad had we're Armenian by race, and for us, we're kind of spread all over the world. Um, my grandparents had settled into the Middle East, and my dad had left the Middle East in order to go to university. My mom went along with him, and that's why I was born in London. By then, by the time my dad was out of school and then started to work, the my grandparents had moved from Beirut to the States, and they settled into New Jersey because we had some other family that had settled there prior to that, and that's what drew us to come to the New York area.
Amazing. And then what got you motivated to kind of pivot away from working in corporate? I know you mentioned someone, a colleague tapped on your back to help them, but what really triggered you to kind of do your own thing afterwards?
Yeah, it was kind of two major things. By that point, I had hit the top of my potential at that company, unless I wanted to move to another state. We had too much family here in the Northeast. It wasn't something that was really in the cards for us to move to Texas to further go up my career. So I could have stayed where I was, and I would have been very comfortable. But I had a little bit of an itch. My dad was a business owner. He was a freelance consultant. My mother had a hair salon for many years, so we kind of had a little bit of an entrepreneurial itch in it. My wife's side of the family ran businesses, so it was kind of like with all those coming together. Plus, all right, I want to be able to kind of own my own destiny at that point. That's really kind of what set us off.
That's amazing to hear. So, were they inspirational to you, or were they
Absolutely.
kind of mentors? Like, who really guided you, or were there people that you actually turned to early days for advice?
Yeah, so my mom and my dad definitely were, I would say, inspirational for that I wanted to control kind of what our outcome was. I saw the kind of family life that we were able to have as a result of that. And so, and I have four boys. I wanted to kind of build something that they could also potentially step into, and that was kind of the only real way to be able to do that is to be a business owner. From a mentoring point of view, I would say the most would be my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law has had a couple of small businesses, and he had started his most recent business shortly before I started mine. And so along the way, we've been helpful for each other, him mostly to me, on how to kind of manage and understand, even though we're completely different industries and all that. I would say when I first started Triada, we joined a couple of IT services organizations.
Mm.
ASCII was a big one, a few others, CompTIA, and that's been really um, that was really been helpful to connect with our peers to understand what the industry was. At that point, we were just kind of working at the seat of our pants, partly on the what an IT company is supposed to look like, partly what we should be doing on the business side. I didn't really have any business experience other than what I had seen in corporate, and that's not the same as running a small business.
Yeah, and I love hearing that because everyone goes through their own journey and destiny, right? And for you, there were at least someone that you can kind of, ask questions, right? A lot of people are doing it alone, especially if you're a solopreneur. And there are people out there that are willing to support and help you, right, throughout this whole journey. And you're wearing so many hats as a business owner. So being in business, working for corporate is completely different from owning your own business, as
Oh
you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
There's not just one thing that you're delegated to. You got to take care of operations, HR. You got to take care of your clients. You got to take care of support. You got to work 24/7. You got to be there and you're accountable, right? So
exactly.
a lot more goes on. You have way more responsibility than you think. And, at the early days, I'm sure you can attest to this. How difficult was it in terms of the transition? Were there times that you said, I had enough, I want to go back to corporate?
I that still happens even after being in business for 12 years. It still happens where it's like I could have just been sitting in my office and kind of sipping my coffee and and doing that thing and but then there were then you remember all the other the good parts and so when certainly in the beginning, learning that I'm no longer just an engineer or a manager. I mean, I had management experience, but I didn't necessarily, that doesn't equate to running a company where you're also doing sales, you're also doing accounting, you're also doing the other things. And that was a big, learning curve for us early on. And we're still learning. You make mistakes, you learn from them. You hear other people's mistakes, you learn from them, and that's part of the process and the journey. And that's been it's one of those things where you also have to be coachable. You find coaches, you find mentors, and you listen to them, but you have to make it your own and do your thing.
So let's get on that topic. Are there people that you still use as mentors or coaches? Like, how did you kind of form what you have today? Was it through those people, or was it kind of trying to figure it out?
Yeah, it's yes to all of those things. So we've been involved with lots of different groups and organizations that have had people who are leaders of that, have a kind of a you can almost call it punditry or some kind of worldview on how companies like ours should be run and managed. We've been in peer groups that where we get together in non-competitive ways to discuss how we run our businesses, what our goals are, and we hold each other accountable. I've been in a number of those. So I would say like each of these has added a brick to our wall, so to speak, to kind of grow out how we've how I formulated my kind of my thinking, and it's evolving. I definitely have some thoughts on how for us is the right way to do things. But even 10 years in, we did a massive shift in how we structured our support offering. Previously, we used more outside people. Now we have more inside people. So it's kind of lots of different. The company is always evolving, and I'm always evolving.
That's great to hear. So it seems like you're always pivoting, you're trying new things to see if it works, right? And if it actually works for you, because everything is individualized for your
Yeah.
business. And because you're in control, it's okay to try it, right? As long as it's not detrimental to your client base, right? Or your
Yeah, and I
operations.
think we've made that error in the past where we've maybe change things too quickly,
Yeah.
and not let things bake and settle, and sometimes going for the new shiny thing rather than trying to work with what you have. And that's also bitten us in the past, but we do our best to learn from that and move on.
Yeah. So a lot of people are in the analysis paralysis situation. They overanalyze, but as long as you take small steps, you try different
Yeah.
things, you're pivoting, you make mistakes, learn from them. It sounds like you've done a great job doing that. So a couple other questions in terms of some of the challenges or mistakes that you've made over the last couple of years. Can you share some with the audience members?
Yeah. So I few that I've made, I would say, I mean, probably more than I can remember. There are a couple that come to mind for sure. When we first started early on, we had done, we had some work with some vendors that that some other IT companies wanted to work with and didn't have the connection or whatever it was to work with that company. So we took it on face value that the IT company, these other companies, they weren't really competitors of ours. They were not in our area. So I was willing to help out, and we still do. We help out other IT companies all the time, but we sold them some equipment without getting paid up front, and it was quite a bit of money for that time. This is going back like about 10, 11 years, almost it's the first couple of years of being in business. That hit us hard when they decided not to pay. And because we delivered the equipment, we had to pay our vendor. And that was hard. So we ended up having to actually take a loan to pay off the vendor and then pay off the loan. So it ended up being even more expensive than the initial loss. Excuse me.
Yeah. So you then put in a procedure at the beginning for upfront payment. Like what did you do afterwards so
Yeah,
that
so for stuff like that, if it was a company that we hadn't been doing business with ongoing,
yeah.
we expected an upfront payment before doing that. Now, for our customers, we do a little bit differently. So if we have a client that we've been doing ongoing, where we have some clients that we've had since the beginning,
Yes.
they ask me to order a new computer, I'm going to order them a new computer and invoice them. I'm not going to necessarily wait for them to pay in order to send something. Some would disagree with that. I look at it as, it's kind of a good business practice. I have 30 days to pay. They need to pay me right away. Within that, if they pay me within that 30 days, we're good. So it doesn't end up being a problem for the most part. But that's definitely one of the processes that we adjusted for. We also, another mistake that we learned a few years later was, we kind of do these, want to say, all-inclusive packages. You pay one fee, you get all a bunch of services kind of in the box, so to speak, every month. And one of our oldest clients was moving offices, and there was really no way for us to capitalize on that in any way. It ended up becoming a net loss for us to do that, because we did it under the inclusion of our existing contract rather than having specific exclusions like, hey, if you do something like this drastic, like moving offices, that's not covered, and that's going to be additional billable. So along the way, we've learned to add and adjust what our contracts look like in order for that. I mean, we never really want to refer to our contract for what we're doing, but sometimes it's necessary, and you want to make sure that you're covered. So we learn to talk to the right lawyers and make sure that we have the right terms of service in that. And those are the things that you've learned along the way.
Yeah, and I love your examples because it happens to every business owner, right? You got to take care of your loyal customers and you do things for them, right? That you wouldn't do if they are new because they've been with you for years and they're going to pay your bills, right? They are reliable sources. And so it's more of the relationship building that is important. And then, of course, for certain scenarios, yes. And then once you've ate the loss or you've kind of understood what you need to do to improve, you just incorporate moving forward. So I love
Yep.
those. Um, in terms of running a business now, and I know you're in the IT field, technology changes so rapidly. How do you stay on top of that?
Yeah, I mean, something has changed from when we started this conversation, I'm sure, right? So it's one of those things where it's always happening. So I listen to a lot of podcasts. That's not surprising, I think, and not only technology. So we listen to technology podcasts, we listen to business podcasts, we listen to politics. Even everything kind of informs uh, your worldview and kind of understanding what's going on. So that's one. Peer groups, so we're learning from our peers, sure. Our vendor partners, we learn a lot from them as well. And reading and websites. You have to be curious. The IT business, and especially in cybersecurity, you have to have an innate sense of curiosity to look and explore and try things. Otherwise, it doesn't work, and you don't move forward, and you end up with companies that are held in the past. And where our view is when it comes to technology is not technology for technology's sake. That was kind of how it happens sometimes in corporate because there's so many layers. But we really look to align uh, technology with what the business goals are, not only for ourselves, but obviously for our customers too. So that's how we approach it with them. It's like, how is this technology going to help them be better or help them reduce their risk? And if we're now charging $1,000 to protect something that costs $300 to replace, maybe that doesn't make sense. But if you take a step back and says, okay, this $1,000 investment is going to help them um, reduce overhead because their staff can now do other things because we're automating it, that makes sense. If we're saving them from the potential loss of being out of business for 2 days with this, $1,000 device or equipment or whatever, then that makes sense. But you have to make sure that the all these things align.
Yeah, so throwing like business cases together, really doing due diligence on like new software and advancements,
Yep.
because you, like myself, there's a lot of things going on in digital, right?
Yeah.
Advancements, changes, updates. There's so much like moving
Yeah.
to 5G. I'm sure will have huge ramifications in terms of like just processing speed. People have the ability to do 1,000 times as much or fast as 4G, right? So there's a lot going on. So it's great to hear that you're curious, and as a business owner, you have to be, or else why would you be in this IT world, right?
Yeah, and we approach it's helped us approach other things too in that way. So, even though it started out with a curiosity in technology, that's expanded to a curiosity in business. Like, how can we do something better, faster, cheaper? How can we, same thing with marketing. What can we do that is going to give us more leverage with our marketing spend? All that, the curiosity definitely helps expand into a lot of different areas.
That's amazing. So early days, I just wanted to ask you. I know you mentioned you got a lot of referrals, or you had a lot of contacts to get you going to start. Um, it helped you get in the door, right?
Mhm.
Outside of that, how else did you try to get new customers? Um, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So when from a lead gen point of view, we kind of, I don't want to say we cast a large net, but we do go down some certain factors. So uh, referrals certainly. We also use centers of influence, which is kind of like an offshoot of that, where a company that will, sometimes they're called joint ventures, but we sometimes we will use another third party that also sells to our customer base and work with them in order to do things to leverage their contacts. We leverage our contacts on their behalf, etc. Networking, and even more so, actually, in-person networking as well as online networking with like platforms like LinkedIn has been very beneficial for us. And then we try to get the word out, whether it's something like this, or we put out a paper, or we write a book. We have another book coming out where we're doing a chapter in a cybersecurity book. We're the anchor chapter at the end, that is being released on Amazon in the next couple of weeks. So it's any of those things we try to use as leverage to, because it's one person. I'm chief technology, chief sales, chief marketer. I'm doing all these things. So we want to make sure we maximize our time doing all these things. So a little bit of a lot of things, and then some things we go a little bit deeper because we've seen a growth on it. For example, email marketing. I haven't been fully successful on that. I think it's been one of the areas that it's a weak point for us is list building. And as a result of that, that's kind of hurt us in our email marketing game. But we've done better in other areas like social marketing through direct connections, in-person marketing, and then the centers of influence. Those would be the big three for us.
That's awesome. And then a couple last questions. So, it seems like you've been doing this for a couple years, and 12 plus years. What continues? What's your key driver right now? What keeps you going? What's your purpose and goals at the end of it?
Yeah, when my wife and I started the company in 2008, our ultimate goal was always that we would build something that we could pass on. So
Generational.
yeah, this was always the decision. The decision early on was always that Triada would be a multi-generational company, and that one or more of our boys will step into it and probably will take it and change it in some way and make it even better than it is. And that's kind of the idea. It's also allowed us a certain kind of lifestyle for sure, right? So it's allowed me to coach soccer. It's allowed me to be on the school board. It's allowed me to pay for 3 colleges. We have 2 in college now. 1 graduated recently. The 4th one's still in high school. So it's allowed us to do a lot of those other things that otherwise I think would not have been as easily possible. Definitely not spending them as much time as I did with them with sports and what have you, if I was in corporate still.
That's amazing. And then, do you see any of your children picking this up? Like, are they into IT right now? Are they?
Yeah, my oldest is. My oldest graduated with an IT degree.
Nice.
He is working with a friendly competitor right now. It's always been the idea that he should go work somewhere else, kind of learn on his own, and then when he's ready, come back. And that's so far that's been working out as planned. The others, we're not so sure. There may be one more in there somewhere. We'll see, and it might be something that they add something to it that wasn't something that originally planned. My second son is a computer engineer, so that's what I studied in college. Even though I eventually went into IT. Computer engineering in the mid 90s or early 90s is completely different than it is now. Computer engineering today is more software and devices and mobile devices and what have you. And I think there is an opportunity with taking that bringing that into our company and then kind of expanding it even more. So there's some other possibilities in the future.
That's amazing. So have you been dripping them with like potentially kind of taking this over eventually, or subtly, of course, because it's kind of overwhelming for children, right? Like,
Yeah, I'm not sure how subtle we were. it's always been, they're around it, right?
Yeah, they see it.
My office is in my house. It has been for 6 7 years now, even prior to the pandemic. So they see what we do and what I do, and that sort of thing. They've always had it. Even the ones that are less inclined to get involved in IT or computers, they still have, I would say, a computer technology skill set that maybe they from that sort of influence. But we've always talked about it, and we talk about business at the table. They understand kind of what's going on. We've included them more and more as they've gotten older. So I wouldn't say there's an expectation, but we always wanted to uh, have them have the option that if this is something you want to do. I think we've shown to them that business ownership is, there's some there's a lot of good to it. You also are going to get some stress. You're going to see that, that's definitely not it's not as, you punch out at 5 o'clock and you go home. Not like any other IT job necessarily. You punch up at IT and go home, and that's the end of it. I feel like I still used to work 15 18 hour days back then, but it's one of those things where it's rewarding, in many other ways,
Yeah.
for that.
It sounds like it's super gratifying. It sounds like you set yourself up for the next generation, your family, to be
I hope
involved.
so.
And it seems like you're a great dad, right? And that's what everyone wants to be, right? Like they want to play a vital part in children's career or life and being present. It sounds like you're allowing them to see. And a lot of people are afraid, right? They're not certain, and it's great that you're embracing everything and then letting them in on what's potentially possible if they
Right.
decide to choose this kind of career. So it's great to hear that. I love it.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's fun. It's fun.
Well, thanks a lot, Raffi. I did have a really good time just learning about your journey, learning about your business. So, how can some of the listeners get a hold of you, your business, and learn a little bit more about your services?
Yeah, so you can reach us out at triadanet.com. It's triadanet.com. Uh, Learn about what we do. We do work with small businesses of all kinds, even though we primarily focus on financial services companies. You can set up a consultation. If you go to triadanet.com/podcast, it'll actually take you to a little giveaway. If you're interested to fill out your information, we send some information back to you.
Amazing. Well, Rafi, we had a great time getting to know you. There's a lot of people out there that need to hang out with good business owners that are looking for the best interests of others. And it sounds like you're molding your family and making sure that they're involved in the business. And that's, I'm sure, how you take care of your clients as well. So I love it. Thanks a lot, Rafi, for
Thanks,
joining
John.
me today.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.